A quick disclaimer before we begin. The PEMF podcast does not contain any medical advice, and the content provided is for informational purposes only. If you have any health concerns, please visit a healthcare professional. Welcome back to another episode of the PEMF podcast. Today's guest is an extremely experienced figure in the world of sports, performance, and injury recovery, Dr. Sean Drake, also known as the Athlete's Doctor on Instagram. Dr. Drake has worked with elite athletes across the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, and even high-impact sports like the XGames, Nitro Circus, and UCI BMX World Cups. We'll be talking about how he's using complementary therapies like PEMF and many more to help his athletes get the most from their recovery and optimize performance. But for anyone who may not know you, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your background, your education, and how you end up working with some of the world's top athletes.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show, Andy. I've been following you guys since you started. I think what you're doing is amazing. And, to me, it's there's multiple aspects to the human body, right? So I was a military kid, grew up all around the world. I went to a lot of schools in very few years. And ended up walking on the Florida State's track and field program. And I got injured. I got in a car wreck. And that led me to chiropractic. And I talk about this a lot about, hey, how did I get into the modality world? And, we'll get into that during this podcast, but it was through the evolution of healing myself and finding things that actually worked with me that really helped me advance where we're at in this clinic right now, and help my athletes stay on the field longer, and more importantly, have a life after the sport.
Oh, cool. Okay. So let's jump straight into the PEMF for this one, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what you're doing kind of on top of that. But when did your PEMF journey start? When was the first time you heard of it? When did you come across it? And why did you then decide to start using it on your athletes?
So first, I was in a master's program for sport injury management and performance. And, I was at Life University, and, we were working with Kennesaw State and a bunch of other different programs in rugby. And, I got frustrated with healing times, and getting guys back. And so I started to do a ton of research, and, my dream was to be an astronaut. And at the end of the day, I was like, all right, well, let me look at what like NASA they're doing to make sure that there's like the ability to not break down in space. And that's where I came across some papers talking about PEMF with bone density and astronauts, and how they're actually using that pre, during, and post to make sure that they can have longevity in space and out of space. So I started looking into PEMF. And I got introduced to OSCA, which is a portable travel unit. It's a low Gauss system. But I was like, okay, can this thing really even work, right? For pain or discomfort. And so when I was at Titleist Performance Institute, we had a deal with them. They were right there in Carlsbad. So I went down and I got one. But prior to that, I started looking at a lot of high Gauss systems. Because when you look at increasing bone fracture, or you're looking at nervous system function, and I'll talk about nervous system later because that came onto that. But looking at muscle recovery, started to see a quicker response as we started to play with different units. And so that's really kind of how I got into the PEMF world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what are you using now? So what devices are your call upon devices, and do you consider them low intensity or high intensity?
So I think you need both, right? I think there's this misconception of one's better than the other. And, I talk about this a lot, especially with me training, right? Currently I'm training for an Ultraman and half Ironman next week. I use high Gauss for myself when I'm looking at, okay, I don't want to put as much time on the road right now because I've got tons of clinic hours. I'm traveling. I just got back from the biohacking conference. So I'll actually use the high Gauss system to charge my body, to use it as exercise for maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I'm getting that high energy. I'm working out without having to put a lot of load on my body. But then I'm using low Gauss system at the end of the night to help me recover, so I can be on it for a longer period of time. So you got to look at, when you're looking at PEMF, one's not better than the other, right? It's what is your goal on what you're trying to accomplish with that system?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's what we try and drill in all the time, because it's a good combination to use, both low and high. So and when you're using the systems, if you're using them on yourself or on athletes, are you using it as more of a recovery tool, or are we talking more about increasing performance?
So I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I do not like the word recovery.
Okay.
And here's why. I think it's really important that we put this out. And this is where I'm going with our clinic, right? If you're constantly trying to recover, are you truly training correctly?
Mm.
And so when we look at this, it's resilience training, right? So even when you're quote recovering, you're in a training system.
Mm.
So if you get out of the mindset of, oh man, I beat the crap out of my body and now I've got to go get on this to recover. Well, instead, what if you put your training, whatever it's going to be, and then know that whatever modality you're using is still training. So for instance, right, like I use pulse centers in our clinic right now in high Gauss. I have their XL Pro. And the reason that I'm such a fan of that system currently is that you're able to literally switch in between frequencies from a very high power to a low power with higher speed. So if I'm, instead of saying like, hey, like you come into me and you're like, Sean, what's your sport, Andy?
If I had to name a sport, probably be boxing. That's the one I've done the most of.
Okay, awesome. So I had an amazing boxer in the other day, and Matt Thomas is a good buddy of mine in Atlanta who does chess boxing.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking boxing, right? And we're like, hey, I just went into a really like hard impact. My wrists are sore. This is going on. I don't really care about where the pain is. I want to know subjectively, okay, where are you at on an exhaustion scale?
Mm.
Well, if you tell me, dude, I'm just burnt. Okay, I need to put more energy into your body. So I may use a higher power at a lower speed to just get a lot of energy in you to bring you back up from a nervous system standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you come into me and you're like, you just had a great workout, but you're like, man, I'm charged up. Like we just had a match and for baseball and we had a game and you freaking pitched and now you're all ramped up. Maybe I'm going to put you on the PEMF on like a 7.8 or 8.8. Go longer for a little bit of time at a lower intensity over a period of time to bring the nervous system down. So it's really learning how to use the modality for the nervous system more than necessarily for what you feel.
Mm-hmm. So you're really tailoring to, what they're coming through the doors for. So it could be a combination of injuries, performance, bit of both. Is that?
It's always performance, right? Even if you're injured.
Okay, yeah.
No, it really is. Like if we think about life, right?
It's a good way to look at it.
So many people get in this mindset of, oh, I'm injured. I can't do anything.
Mm.
That irks me, dude. I'm like, no. Okay, let's say you tear ACL. I can work your butt out just as hard as you did in the gym using modalities and using different systems in neurology to help you expand your ability while you're healing, right? I tell people when they come in my door and they're like, dude, I had a UCL tear or I had a knee injury or I had a concussion or I have whatever injury or diagnosis they want to say they have. I'm like, no, you have a limitation. There is a limitation in your body and your system and your mind and your soul. If I can take that limitation and now start to improve it, you're going to not only heal faster, right? Like, the thing Trevor Hall says, who Trevor Hall is, the artist?
No, I don't. Sorry.
You got to listen to him. There's a song that's called You Can't, You're Healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I love. I play for a lot of my guys that are in their head, they're broken down, they're depressed. But what I do say is that if you can learn how to move the energy in the body, you can heal faster.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a great way to look at it. So is there also a sport that you see predominantly? Because you spread yourself across like a number of different sports. And is there one that you see most of using the PEMF? So like, are you getting like 80% boxers using it or in the NFL or is there one that particularly benefits the most or?
I'm going to take the real answer of what my gut says, right? Like life is a sport.
Yeah.
So it's not the one's using more than the other, right? Like there is more systems in MLB now because my guys came to me and they started recommending them to the teams. Teams are asking me to say, hey, how do I actually use this thing? And that's trickling into a lot. Like, here's the thing is when I got into like PEMF and my guys started using them, my guys started buying them because it's part of my protocol. I'm like, hey, you need to do this before the game, this after the game. You do this if you're injured. You do this if you got a brain concussion. You do this if you got blank. Well, they started demanding, hey, I want this in the clubhouse, or hey, I want this at the field, or hey, I want this on the road. So you're going to see these systems, and there's different companies, right? Like certain, ATs or PTs or, performance directors have relationships with different companies. And there's been a lot of different companies like, there's MagnaWave, there's Hugo. I can go down the list. I've owned them all, and I still have pretty much all the systems. So
yeah, no, same here. Got a collection of them now. Yeah.
But here's the thing is like, different systems might meet a different guy's needs differently. Like some guys are like, hey, I don't like this system, but they love another system. And so to me, it's like, I've got to meet the athlete where they are. And that's why I use a lot of different things in here. But at the end of the day, I will say this. If you are a quote human on this earth and you are trying to live your best life, PEMF is one of the number one things that I tell everybody to do, because you've got to have energy. Number one, you've got to have the ability for the cells to be able to get rid of waste. You've got to make sure that they're, excited. You got to make sure they can respond and react. So at the end of the day, PEMF is always in every one of my care plans. People are like, oh, well, you just put me on this modality. And then I'm like, and then I do this and I do this. And, what are you really doing? And then they're like, holy crap. After like 3 to 6 visits, they're like, dude, my sleep's better. I'm actually like, I'm feeling better. I have clarity. My digestion's better. Holy crap. My HRV's better. Whoa, my SpO2 is better. And so like, it just goes on and on and on.
And that comes with a good question, actually. Like, are you able to track those things? So, because with PEMF, especially low intensity, a lot of the time people can't feel anything. They don't know, other than anecdotally, sleep better, or they got more energy throughout the day and things like that. Are you able to track this using PEMF and, different ways to track it? Do you track it for your athletes? And what are you seeing the differences in?
So 2 things on that. I think when you're so out of touch with your body, and I think a lot of people are, right? Like they've got a lot of emotional stress inside their body. They're holding on to a lot of things. Like if I get on a low Gauss system, I can feel the energy, right? I know you probably can too. Like it's becoming in tune with who you are and where you're at. And so a lot of people are like, oh man, I bought a Beamer. I bought, a low Gauss mat from another company, like a higher dose or whatever. And I just don't feel anything, or like a biomat or whatever. There's tons of them out there. And they're like, but I don't feel anything. And I'm like, and that was me, by the way. So when I got into low Gauss, I called BS on it. I'm like, there's no way this works. I don't feel anything. Like, this is ridiculous. But what I started to really play with is looking at my HRV, and I started looking at my DEXA scans. So I think if you're going to look at your life adding modalities, you've got to get a DEXA scan. Number one, it's going to look at your bone density, your visceral fat, your normal muscle tissue, and your lean muscle tissue. To me, it's one of the gold standards. If you're really if you're going to track your body over a period of time, and this is really where power comes into play, of consistency. Like if you buy a low Gauss mat and you don't use it consistently, throw it away or give it away.
Yeah.
Because you've got to because the thing is, if you're buying a mat for a problem, you're already at such a low level. You've got to build that ability up to build your batteries back into a decent shape. Then once you're there, you may need less on the mat, but now you're back into that homeostasis.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a massive advocate for PEMF, which is great. We've seen a bunch of your videos talking about the benefits and, just opening this podcast, you're singing its praises. But do you think there's a time where PEMF is going to become standard practice in professional sports? Because we're seeing it more often now. But
it already is standard.
Maybe it's you think, yeah, it's because
here's the thing. It may not be standard practice in the clubhouse, but it's standard practice in the hotel room with the best of the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like the team has a piece of it, right? And I think a lot of there's some, I'll give a shout out to Brandon McDaniel, the Dodgers. Like, he's phenomenal. Like, he has done a great job at being open-minded to so many different things, right? You got, Neil over at the Cubs. You've got Max and Ryan over at the Diamondbacks. You've got Larry up at who's a strength coach and a body worker, but is up at the Yankees. And I can go down the list of so many amazing individuals in MLB, right? You've got over in Buffalo, like the AT over there with Von Miller. Like, Vaughn is probably one of the most adaptive athletes, I've ever had the chance to, consult with and talk with. And he's got a SAC summit coming up for the NFL in 3 weeks. And you better believe that when I build out activation rooms for these big events, PMF is a massive part of it because these guys, number one, they need to feel. They're getting beat on the freaking, field every day, just like rugby. My rugby players love PMF because they get this sensual feeling so they can connect and then they can let go. So like you're getting hit. Well, what I can do is I can use that PMF to almost like basically, if you really think about it, recreate that trauma effect for a second, get them to feel it, and then bring them into a lower energy. And then now they're like, oh, I can just relax. So we're getting that emotional and that, built up like stress energy out of their body.
Yeah. And it's quite interesting what you said about the players seem more keen to get it themselves, get them in their homes and that sort of thing. And we see that in the UK as well. We actually have quite high level football players, rugby players, boxers contacting us directly, which we find is a bit weird. You think, well, why isn't Manchester United Football Club contacting us? But, we sold a device to Cristiano Ronaldo. So it's, and delivered it to him, personally, which is strange. But do you think there's something possibly holding the clubs back from PEMF? Is there anything in your mind that maybe would help its adaptation into these clubs?
Well, can I take it out of PMF for a second?
Yeah.
Because here's the one thing you have to understand and respect about pro teams. And at the end of the day, the athletic trainer is the gatekeeper of the medical facility, right? We have our medical director, we have our performance director. You got your athletic trainer, then you got your PT, your chiro, your ACU, or any other person that's going to be kind of underneath that. At the end of the day, a lot of the teams are, pigeonholed by budget. And so they only get 1 year of a budget cycle.
Yeah.
And so they've got to really look at like, okay, number one, like, Boston, they want to have a system. They want to have all this stuff, but the actual stadium itself, there's not enough room within the area that they have it currently, right? So when you're looking at bringing the modality into a pro team, and I consult for a lot of pro teams and I consult for a lot of companies, I always say, like, number one, what is your space square footage? Then number two, I ask, okay, if I'm a genie and I get to help your team be the World Series champ, the Super Bowl champ or the whatever it's going to be, how can I help you? What are your top 3 wishes? And based from there, then I can go into, okay, maybe that's not the thing they need right now on their goal. Because if they buy something, and there's a lot of teams that do this, they'll get excited, right? There's fads that go like this through sport. And, they'll be like, I want to buy this tool, or I want to buy this thing. But then it never gets used, or the guys don't like it. And so because they were never properly taught how to use it, so then they stop using it. I think within PMF itself, I think more and more people are adapting to it. Number one, because they see the ability of the body to heal quicker and the guys to get pain relief. The guys love it. Some of the systems are really harsh and they're like, bam, bam. And they're like, I don't want that on me. Right. So that's why it's really good to have an adjustable, style of PMF to maybe bring it down and build their capacity up within that. And the other side of it too is that when you're 1 or 2 ATs and you're trying to manage all these guys, it's like, how do I build this into my system based on the philosophy that I have from what I know?
Yeah, it was interesting what you said, actually, in terms of the budget for the clubs, because that's something we found. We sold a device into a really high-level Premier League football club, and it took us 6 months for them to pay it, which we found really interesting because, you think these clubs have got unlimited budget, and maybe most of that budget's going on their players. But you talk also about stacking PMF and layering PMF with other modalities like red light, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, breath work, and manual therapy. How do you integrate that as well? So how do you stack those together? Do you have kind of set protocols at all?
So I would say this, I have a set philosophy, and it starts with neurology. So in the last 8 months, I've really dove deep into functional neurology, quantum neurology. And I've always said that what I'm an expert at is the nervous system. And I've always believed that because I think that's the number one thing, right? And, when I look at you as an athlete or someone walking into my door, you can't just use one tool to create the optimal change of what you need. Like Tesla said, that, we're sound, frequency, and vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm sitting in a solo dome right now. Like we use vibroacoustic therapy. I'm a huge fan of sound. So when you look at it, it's like, how do I create efficiency in the body? I use Nano V, which is massive for me with oxygen. I have hyperbaric. I have hypoxic training, which is like low, altitude. I've got CO2. So actually breathing CO2. I've got VASPA. So looking at like a blood flow restriction with a cryotherapy. So I'm keeping you in a calm state while I'm stressing your body with blood flow restriction. So we're reducing cortisol, increasing growth hormone on the other side. We've got, I use shift wave, which is a vibropercussion with a little bit of like breath. I use Roxiba from a light standpoint, to stimulate the brain, take in and out of your trauma responses. We use Flopresso. My wife uses EQ flux wave, which is a reactive technology. And I know that you're going to be doing a podcast with her. We use shockwave, we use stem wave, we use laser, I have 4 different types of lasers, So when you're looking at the human body, you got to know how to play the body. I've got Resemax. By the way, Andy, I'm going to connect you with Sherrick at Resemax. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a huge guy for you because it's using microvibration for the brain, but also working on the body, which is going to be massive for you guys with all your boxers and football players.
Yeah.
But as you see, like, we're not a recovery center. Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't a membership clinic, right? This is an optimal health performance center for your nervous system and for your life. Mm-hmm. And so if you're just going in and you're like, hey, like, oh, I love to get in the sauna and I love to get on PEMF and because it feels good. It's like, well, what do you really need? If your body, you're like, yeah, it feels good, but then I push you on the PEMF and I have 100 tests, by the way. I take the square pad, I put it on 100 and I see how close you can come to your hips. If you can't get to your hips, that tells me that you're reducing your transfer power from the ground up to your upper body by minimal 30%. So if you're a boxer and you take your PEMF and you put your on 5.0 all the way to 100 and you're standing up and you bring it towards your hips and you're like, whoa, I can't get to my hips without it like severely hurting me. Your energy capacity in your body is at a lower level than you think it is for performance.
No, I understand. And you mentioned in there actually about the shift wave a little bit back, and I want to kind of touch on that device because we saw you using that on first responders during the LA fires.
Yeah,
that was the most recent fires, wasn't it? Because I think actually
fires. We just had an Arizona fire that we're helping out behind the scenes too.
Oh, okay. Well, I say most recent, but I think they're pretty much consistent at the moment, aren't they? So
yeah.
But what was the shift wave device, and how was you helping the first responders with that product?
So it's a really great tool when you look at being able to put somebody under stress and get them into parasympathetic quickly, but you can also use it from the opposite, put them into sympathetic. It was Evan Burns is a Green Beret in the military. He's a good buddy of mine, and he called me. He's like, "Hey man, we got to do something." And, I was sitting in my office and I was actually at a Quicksilver seminar, and I'm like, let's do this. And so literally we kind of broke every law. We talked our way through, every single checkpoint, got all the way to the governor's area at 11, 12 o'clock at night, found the CO, said, hey, this is what we want to do. Can we get your permission? And then we spent 4.5 hours to 3:30 in the morning going to every firehouse, meeting the contact there. And then for 4 days straight, and then by the time I had the next day set up, it wasn't just shift wave. We had 15 locations, and now we had chiros, acus, massage therapists, every single modality you could think of being able to be brought into these places to help these firefighters actually calm down, be able to finally take a deep breath. It was traumatic to see what really was going on. If you think of a war zone, this was like an atomic bomb went off in the Palisades.
No, 100%. Well, we actually flew out of LA and saw the devastation when it was about a week after they were, under control. But I think that means like 40% or something. So, it was a pretty incredible time for anyone in the area. I want to give you a hypothetical situation and scenario and see if you've got a protocol for this. So if you have a top athlete come into you and he's performing, say a local athlete, and he's performing, he's got a big event that day, do you have a set kind of go-to couple of products that you would use them for making them perform better for that event?
Well, number one, breath work.
Mm-hmm.
Our breath is free, right? Like every single thing that I do at my clinic includes a different type of breath work. Breath work's number one. Every one of my guys knows that we have specific breath works on what we're going to do. Mm. So if we're getting ready to ramp up, I'm going to do an excitation breath work with visualization, with the music playing, with sound waves to get them into that setting, right? So they know their nervous system's safe. It's ready to go. We got it. Then we're going to do probably a high Gauss PEMF. I want to charge the body up as much as I can. I'm going to get them on a Nano V, get the oxygen excitation going. I'm probably going to put them on 14 minutes to get them into like a good stimulation. Everything's moving, ATP's going, inflammation's going down. Probably use a shift wave with an excitation if we need to, if we don't have something else. I'm a huge fan. We're actually launching Freak Athlete, FREQ Athlete, which is a vibroacoustic app. So that way it actually tones and gets your nervous system prepped, also recovers you, has a sleep protocol. And we've got about 15 other different things that we're putting into it. And then the big thing too is always, making sure the body's primed and ready to move. So when I'm working with an athlete getting ready to prepare, I had a pro golfer that had a tournament here in town yesterday, came in the morning, went through his entire neurology, body, made sure that all of his movements were efficient, set his nervous system into all of the movements that we needed. And then we did a little bit of newbie activation with the new fit just to get his body primed and to go and activated. And then boom, he went out the door. He texted me yesterday. He's like, dude, that's some of the best I've played in a long time.
Good. Oh, it's interesting. You mentioned the breath work as well, like you say, because it's free and it's something they can call upon even moments before the game.
Yeah.
And you mentioned app as well. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I said, and during the game, like, I have a lot of my pro pitchers, their heart rates spike during their pitching. And then we have breath work that literally bring them right back down when they get in the dugout. You'll notice all my top guys, you'll see them if they're ever on ESPN or on like into the station. You'll see them go sit down.
Start the deep breaths.
And boom, and get the heart rate back down. Now they're ready to go. They're not going to spike.
Yeah. And in that, actually, you mentioned about an app. And I know you've co-founded and worked closely with movement screening systems like OnBase U for baseball and Racket Fit for tennis. So during those, like, what did you learn about physical limitations and how that affects performance in the sports? And how does that influence your approach to recovery and injury prevention? Or sorry, not recovery. We're not using that word. Injury prevention. I
think, I give Greg Rose a lot of credit. I met him when I Sports Performance Institute in San Francisco, and I wanted to bring SFMA to the curriculum. And what I loved about his approach to golf was that there's not one way to move. There's an infinite number of ways, but there's one efficient way for us to move based on what we can physically do, right? Now I've added, and when you get physical, there's the mental component, there's equipment, there's the coaching, then there's a neurological component. So when you're screening an athlete, number one, I know the athletes that I love to work with because I know those sports. Like if I don't know a sport and you're coming to me, I research it. I'm like, okay, well, what is this? What is this sport? How do they move? What do they need? And then during my interview with you, I'm like, okay, take me through your movement so I can visually see it. Instead of saying, I'm just going to adjust your back or your neck or your ankle. I want to know, how do I make you efficient in the movement that you're actually trying to accomplish? So it's really good when you look at movement strength. And not only that, but it gives you trust and credibility with the athlete who's in front of you that you actually know their sport.
Yeah.
Like I can screen any pitcher in the world and I will tell you exactly how they throw. And they're like all the time, before I touch them, I screen it and I'm like, this is what you're doing. You're falling off or you're up or, can't get over, you're flying open. And I'm using verbiage they know, number one, but they know that I know their sport. So it's really good to have that credibility and trust, but also for them to be like, holy crap, this dude actually knows what I'm doing. I had a young pitcher come in from college yesterday and he's been having back issues. and they keep making a pitch. Well, if I show you his movement screen, the kid can't physically move. Within one session with us, working his body, doing all of our nervous system stuff, getting the stress and anger and frustration of the season out of his body, he was 85% better in just moving. And I'm like, yeah, now you're taking the stress and load off the lower back. You've made your body into a flow state. Now you can actually go perform.
And let's say one of your athletes comes to you and they've got like a multi-day tournament. Would you give them a protocol to follow, say, for the entire weekend of their tournament? And like, would that protocol include PEMF, for example?
And you can come out to my fall class that I'm launching on modalities.
Yeah.
We go over all these protocols. But yeah, I think it's, so let's talk multi-day events. I'm a endurance athlete, right? Can I just talk about let's talk about me for a second instead of the athlete.
Yeah.
I think it's really...
It's your podcast. You're the spotlight.
No. But like, I think if we're going to talk multi-day for a second, like I've got to swim 5 miles on day 1. I got to bike about 200 and something miles day 2, and I got to run 56 miles day 3. So let's think about that. So the night before my race, I'm going to make sure that I'm probably going to do flow presso for length to make sure everything's moving through my body, right? I'm probably going to do a low Gauss PEMF. So that way I get into a rest state, parasympathetic. I'm going to use Nano V to get oxygen. I'm going to use red light, or actually I'll probably use a little bit of a calming, green light to be able to get that forest energy side of things. I'm going to use an AccuMat for pressure. I'm going to have a Roxiva that I'm probably going to put on an hour setting, because I want to create that stress and adaptation the night before so that my body knows, hey, tomorrow's going to be a hard day, but you can do this. I'm going to get on a shift wave sleep cycle probably. I'm going to have my Freak Athlete app because it's going to be hard to travel in my Solo Dome, but I'm going to use my Freak Athlete app to make sure my nervous system is connected through the sound. I'm going to do breath work beforehand to get my visualization, my mindset right. I'm going to make sure that my nutrition's dialed in. And then I'm going to use a Resimax and laser on my brain so that way my eye function and my neurology is good. So that's going to be my prep the night before I go race. The morning of, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to say, look, okay, I got to get high energy PEMF into me. I'm going to travel with the portable because it's going to be hard to travel with the pro. I'm going to make sure that I'm using the Nano V. I'm going to do probably a shift wave session. I'm going to have my, Freak Athlete auditory. And I'm going to use my Resimax to wake up my entire body. And then I'm going to go. After the race, okay, I've got to figure out a quick way to recover. So I'm going to say, okay, good. Well, I'm going to do breath work. I'm going to make sure that I use, again, probably a little bit higher Gauss at the beginning to get energy back in my body, but then bring it back down. I'm going to use Nano V. I'm going to make sure that I work on my body. My wife's going to be with me, so she's going to be using the EQ all over my body, making sure the reactive technology is actually working with myself, my, recovery and nervous system. Nutrition is going to be important. And then visualization for the next day. Mm-hmm. So, and then you're going to repeat that pattern. The next day is going to be a lot harder. So I'm going to use the flow presso on the second day to get as much of that lymph out so I'm ready for my run on day 3. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that there's a different, and honestly, it's all about how the athlete feels, right? Let's go to one of my golfers who has a 3-day event. And so day 1, they get there and they're like, man, I'm just kind of feeling off. Well, I'm going to wake their body up probably with some high energy. I'm going to get them some oxygen. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make sure they're using a red light. I'm going to excitate their body to get them into a good state. Then they go play and they're like, okay, I felt good. Well, I don't want to bring them 100% down because they got another day. So I may just stay up in that higher charge, just a lesser period of time, get them into some movement, work their body, get some oxygen in their system, get some good food in them, tell them to go to bed, look like an Epsom salt bath.
And if you've got a very small bag to take away with you and you've got one non-negotiable tech device, you don't have to say PEMF. What would your non-negotiable be for that weekend? Imagine if it was
honestly,
you.
Right now, the Resimax.
Mm-hmm, cool.
In my laser. The Resimax and my laser. Those are the 2 things that I can literally change my brain, my neurology, and my system within 20 minutes.
No, amazing. And kind of going a little bit different. in your opinion, what's the most like overlooked thing in extreme sports when it comes to recovery?
Resilience.
So anything out there that you think should be, that people are overlooking more?
Dude, I think there's so much people are overlooking. Honestly, breath work. I think if more people understood breath work, they'd get better results with everything they do. And not just Wim Hof style, right? Like I probably do 47 to 50 different types of breath work for different things. And the oxygen component, I think that's really overlooked. Like, if I was a team, every team should have a NAV. It's a no-brainer. Every athlete should have one. And sound, like those are the three. Like the cool thing is with the apps now, with a good subwoofer, your car, headphones, you can get recovery with your phone, if you want to call it recovery.
Yeah. And we've seen some stuff that you've put out there before about the differences between male and female athletes, like in the recovery approach. So do you think there's quite a big difference between male and females in the way you would approach their performance?
So nobody's nervous system is different, period. Right? I really believe this. However, hormones are a real thing, right? Cycles are a real thing. So when you're working with a female athlete, or especially in their menstrual cycle, you got to be really mindful. Like, I'm not a big fan of saying do a cold plunge when you're on your menstrual cycle. You're already in a high stress state because you're literally like moving stuff through your body. So I'm going to be a little bit more gentle with you during that time. And I'm going to maybe say, hey, we don't have to work out as hard, but we still have to get stress in the body in a different way.
No. It makes sense. And there's a lot about it going out with, especially with the ice baths, like you say, to making sure that you're doing those at the right time, especially for women. In the action sport worlds, kind of with the Nitro Circus and XGames, are you seeing kind of a combination of injuries that are coming through that? Because I would expect that is a sport that attracts more injuries. And is that something you see quite a lot of? And what are you using with those with injuries, like broken bones and that sort of thing?
So, I'm just going to say it. I get goosebumps. Like my 5 years with Nitro Circus was like probably one of my funnest times in my life. They're all like little brothers to me. Beaver Fleming is a pro skater, and he's always like, hey, what should I get next? What should I get next? How do I keep going? How do I be the best? When he had his ACL injury, I took him up to Bulletproof Labs when it was Bulletproof Labs, right? This is when Dave Ashby first launched its first area. And I was on the advisory board for Vasper at the time. And, that's when I got introduced to the, pulse center side of it. That's when I got introduced to some of the other things. But when you've got a broken bone, or let's say you're a high trauma athlete, for instance, right? And you just had a major thing happen to your life. I think so many people ignore the neuro-emotional side of it. They're trying to work on the injury that just happened. Like if you fractured your back, or you had your pelvic fracture, or you've got a broken arm, or you had a major concussion. So many times everybody jumps to that versus, dude, let's get this emotional stress out of your body. And that's really where I use Roxiva, where we use the EQ flux wave to work on, the gut and try to feel some of those emotions and work through it with breath work and start to do some neuro-emotional techniques and tapping. EDMR, because I think if you can get that emotional state of that trauma out of the body quicker, those athletes are going to feel in a lot better place.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the ones in the extreme sports are experiencing more trauma with like mental illness, that sort of thing, or is that across the entire sport industry?
Dude, honestly, I think tennis has one of the biggest mental health problems. Tennis players are by themselves all the time. They've got a small team around them. They're constantly on the road. And a lot of the LTA, USTA, Tennis Australia, French Federation, they've really stepped up on the mental aspect of that, right? I've got to work with a lot of federations and organizations. When you're an athlete, like people say like, Sean, what do you really do? Right. And like, at the end of the day, if you ask my guys, they're like, he's not really my chiropractor. He's kind of like my soul coach. Like, you know, he works with me on mental, he works with me on physical, he works with me on spiritual, he works with me with my family. Like, so at the end of the day, it's, you know, when you've got these athletes that are high performers and something happens, their identity is so tied to it. Right. And so it's teaching them that you are more than your sport. You're an amazing human being. I need you to know that person. If we can get to that person, you can do anything.
Yeah. So do you think you treat the extreme sport world differently in terms of the protocols? Like, would you treat...
sometimes I ask.
Yeah. So would you treat like a motocross rider differently to a tennis athlete in your protocols, or is it more on the individual?
No. Everybody's individual, man. Like, here's the thing. When you come in, I always assess you.
Yeah.
There's not one, I don't go and start working on you. I assess you. I can see you. I can look at your posture. If you're like this, I know you're in a shitty response. Sorry, you're in a bad response, right? Like, you're not in your power. Like, I can see it in your face. Like, I just had Brian Galke out here. He's teaching you face recognition right now. And dude, it's insane what you can learn from a face. But like, I see their soul, their energy, their who they are. And like, when you have a pro athlete, or you have an individual or a client that you work with on a regular basis, you know if something's up.
Yeah.
And so like, I'll literally call audibles all the time. I'm like, we're not doing this today. We're doing this. Like, I had a guy come in here yesterday, to give you an example. High performer, like stud athlete, comes in all peacocked, you know, cocky, like really. And I'm like, okay, he's hiding something. I'm like, go straight to the cold plunge room. I'll meet you there in a minute. We're going to do some full exposure. And he's like, what? I'm like, get in the room. And he's like, I don't want to do it. I'm like, get in the room. And so inside my room, I have a thing that says resilience and persistence. And I make my guys read it 10 times, and my girls. And I came in, I'm like, all right, where in these definitions is this coming up for you in your life right now? And he said, and he starts breaking down. And I'm like, tell me the truth of what's going on. And he ended up explaining, I'm like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Get into a power posture. Let's do some heavy breaths. Let's set some affirmations, and let's leave it right here in this cold. And we use a Morosco. I'm like, let's leave it in the Morosco. The ice is about this thick right now. And so I'm like, get in. Gets in, fights it. I'm like, you gotta just let go, breathe. Gets into a calm state. I'm like, dunk your head. You not dunk your head. Dunks his head. Hung up. I'm like, breathe, calm down. Good. Dunk your head. Boom, boom, boom. 5 dunks. Finally, he's 100% at a calm state. Now I have him in a state where I can actually look at what he needs. So this is how it's not just saying, oh, I'm going to do a cold plunge every day, or I'm going to get on PEMF every day. What do you need in the moment that you're in to take the stress at where you're at, to get you into a good state, to now be able to do what you want to do?
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I like your approach. And it's, like you say, everyone's individual. Dr. Sean Drake, we can talk for hours, but we've got to wrap it up at some point. We're gonna do another podcast after this one. Where can people find you if this podcast has resonated with people, or if they want to join the program, come and see you, talk to you about Modern Athlete? Where's the first place to start?
Instagram at Dr. Sean Drake. Then at Modern Athlete. Follow my wife, PEMF Pilates. And then you reach out to us there. I'm launching my modalities course this fall for practitioners and people that want to learn how to use modalities better. And I'm finally announcing that. So it's going to be going on Instagram in the next couple of days. It's going to be a 3-day event. It's not just an education. Your life is going to transform over the 3 days. So what I do with my pro athletes, what I do with all of my individual clients that I work with in like intensives, we're going to be doing that together. And so if you're going to come, be ready to work, be ready to, explore who you are and understand that modalities, that at the end of the day, you are the modality. And, I'm launching my podcast called You Are the Modality. Nadia, I'd love to have you on. But at the end of the day, you are the modality. You've got to make sure that you are in tune, that you're connected, and that what you're doing is where you're supposed to be in life. And what's cool is all these other modalities get to help enhance the one that you are.
No, thank you so much. And to our audience, thanks again for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on your favorite streaming platforms. It really helps us bring more guests like Dr. Sean Drake and their knowledge to share with you guys. We'll leave some links under here to the Instagram that's been mentioned and any other useful links. But Sean, thank you again for joining us today. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you.